Alright, this is Connor with Biker's Edge. Today we have a really cool video for you. It is the brand spanking new Santa Cruz Heckler. So this bike has been completely redesigned for 2022. It has a brand new frame with new geometry, and my favorite part about it is it now comes in a full 29-inch wheel option. So this thing has seen a ton of updates, brings it right up into the modern world of e-bikes. Is it the best e-bike that Santa Cruz has ever made? Stick around to find out. All right, we are going to really quickly run through the geometry highlights on this bike, just in case you haven't seen it. It has 150 millimeters of rear travel, 160 millimeters up front. It comes in three wheel size options. It comes in either a full 29 or a mullet setup. And in a size small, it only comes in a full 27.5 setup. And there's no swapping between those wheel sizes. You get the one you get, and you're not going to be able to buy a link or a new rear triangle to go back and forth between the two. So choose wisely. It does have a flip chip, so you're able to adjust the geometry really slightly. Santa Cruz does not do a huge range on most of their flip chips. So for example, head tube angle on this bike is either 64.5 degrees or 64.8 degrees in the higher setting. Seat tube angle is 76.8 degrees or 77 even. I rode an extra large for this video. I'm 6'2" for reference. So in my size bike, the reach is either 492 millimeters or 498. Wrong, 495. And that brings the wheelbase to 1,330 millimeters for the 29-inch bike, or 1,315 millimeters for the mullet version. A lot of that wheelbase comes from the chainstay, which is pretty long. Like most e-bikes are long, so I'm gonna stop saying that. It's normal for an e-bike. In the 29-inch version, it is 461 millimeters, and in the mullet, it is 446. This bike, like a lot of new e-bikes, is using that Shimano EP8 motor. Different from most other bikes, this one is actually using its own proprietary battery, which is 720 watt hours. So it's what, 100 and 220, I'm bad at math, I ride bikes. It's a lot bigger than the standard 500-ish watt hour battery that comes on most of these. So all of these numbers look really good on paper, puts it squarely in the middle of that all mountain bike category. Really good for a bike that's supposed to go everywhere and do everything. So how does it ride out on the trail? Let's get into it.
All right, today we're e-biking. We've got the brand spanking new Santa Cruz Heckler. Oh, because I'm all about health and fitness here. Oh, there it is. Out here at Fruit Loops today. You'll be seeing a lot of Fruit Loops just because the options are pretty limited right now on where we can ride. But you don't care about that. You care about the bike. So here we go, Santa Cruz Heckler. Gonna take it easy here, warm up on the blue line. Try not to throw her back out. Start getting a little feel for this bike. Oh man, it's kind of poppy. That's not what I was expecting from this thing. This thing will jump. Jeez. Woo! I cleared that double maybe the best I've ever cleared it, which is not something you'd expect on a big old fatty e-bike like this. Wow. All right then. First lap was something else. I'm gonna go grab some gloves. These grips don't do well when they get wet and sweaty. They are not the ones for riding gloveless. All right, gloves have been I don't know. These are nice gloves, I like these. They are the Giro somethings. They're great. I'm gonna go blue line one more time. I don't know how. This is the best jumping e-bike I've ever ridden. It's got the most pop. And oh, I didn't make that. Thought I was being cool. Screwed up there. See, it's probably got the Orbea rise by at least 10 pounds. 15 somehow jumps way better. Uh-oh, I'm in trouble. Really digging this bike. I'm 2 laps in. So Santa Cruz must have sprinkled a little extra magic dust on this bike, because somehow it's got all the traction in the world and it's still poppy. I don't know how that works. I thought those two things were kind of mutually exclusive. Oh, I missed the seat there. Oh, way too fast. That was dumb. Just feeling good. Going for the big landing. There it is. It's hard to do 800 bunny hops on a 50-pound bike. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo. That was it. Let's head back to the garage now, wrap this thing up, figure out who this bike's for, and if it's the right bike for you.
Let's start with the uphill performance on this bike. One thing I really like about this and pretty much every other Santa Cruz is the fit is perfect. A new Santa Cruz comes out, I put my name on an extra large, and I know it's going to be one of the best fitting bikes I've ever ridden. The Heckler is no exception. Equal weight distribution and the right fit is super important on an e-bike. You know, you have all that extra power from the motor, and that's going to amplify any sort of unequal weight distribution. For example, if the front end's too light, it's going to lift that front end up a lot, and it's going to be doing wheelies and wandering all over the place. If the back end's too light, you're going to be breaking loose on every steep, loose bit of climb. The Heckler is perfect. Santa Cruz must do a lot of research on like body size stuff, because their bikes consistently are some of the best fitting per size, I guess. I really like them. Another standout feature on the Heckler is that lower link VPP. I've said this probably about every Santa Cruz I've ever ridden. There is traction for days, just gobs and gobs of traction. And that's, again, very important on an e-bike. With that extra power, you're able to climb stuff that you probably couldn't climb on your normal bike. And the limit now becomes traction and not so much power. So having a ton of traction helps you climb harder, techier, more difficult stuff. The Heckler doesn't really care if you're standing up, sitting down, going over loose gravel or loose rubbly, bouldery rocks. It just sticks to the ground and goes. It's not all roses on the climbing. This bike is long. 1,330 millimeters is a very long wheelbase. So you get into tight uphill switchbacks, things get a little tricky. It takes a little bit of technique to get around some of the really tight corners. It's not impossible, and once you learn that technique, it's no longer an issue, but keep that in mind. Bikes are all about trade-offs. You know, you have that long wheelbase, which makes it super stable on the downhill, but now it does make it a little harder to get around a switchback. So this isn't a cross-country bike. It's meant to go everywhere, so that means tough, rugged descents. So that's why you have that long wheelbase, and that will come with a couple of drawbacks. If you're super concerned about that long wheelbase and tight technical trails, so you live on the East Coast, maybe consider the mullet version. And this seems like a good place to go over it. Battery life on this bike is insane. I Strava'd a ride for you. I don't like doing that, but I did it so I could track distance and time, speed, elevation, whatever. I did 12.5 miles and 1,600 vert in a little bit less than an hour, so I was kind of moving, and I had it in boost for most of that time. I lost 1 out of 5 bars of battery, so this bike is going to be really good for long e-bike missions. All right, let's jump into downhill performance. The suspension on this bike is very good. Right out of the parking lot, it felt like most other Santa Cruz bikes I've ridden. Very soft off the top, kind of sits into that mid-stroke a little bit more, gives you a ton of traction, but off of the first jump, this bike felt very different than any other Santa Cruz bike I'd ever ridden. There was a lot of pop on offer, which has been one of my bigger complaints about the lower link platform on some of the new Santa Cruz stuff. This bike, I don't know how they do it. It's some sort of magic and I can't even begin to understand. The small bump compliance is insane. The traction is insane. And then there's still a lot of pop. And for a 50-pound e-bike, that's incredible. For me, the biggest drawback to a full-size heavyweight e-bike is that it feels like it's impossible to get off the ground. So when you can get a poppy full-size e-bike, I mean, that is the perfect combo for me. It goes a very long way in making that bike not feel as heavy as it actually is. It makes it a lot more responsive and fun to ride. So this bike does tend to hang out in the mid-stroke, a lot like a lot of other Santa Cruz bikes. That is really, really good for giving you a very smooth, controlled, planted ride. It also gives you a ton of traction, like I've said before. Where it's not so good is where you're pumping through rollers or you're on flatter terrain. It does feel like it robs a bit of your momentum. On my test lap, there's this kind of raceway section where you can get going really fast and there's big rollers to pump through. And I felt like I was maybe a little bit slower there on this bike. Let's jump into the geometry and the handling. I think the geometry on this bike is about as good as it gets for an all-mountain bike. And what I mean by that is it's slack without going overboard. You know, that slack long bike makes it very stable at speed. It makes it confident in the steeps, but it hasn't gone so far that it now sucks all the fun out of your easier, mellower trails. So the Heckler's handling strikes a really good balance between stable and confident and agile and maneuverable. The bike feels very calm and composed. It's not getting bounced around through the rocks and through the bumps. But because the geometry isn't so extreme, it's also not impossible to get around a corner. In fact, this bike corners very, very well. I think, I don't know, maybe 90% of it is due to the amount of traction that you have. You can just grip insanely well. But on kind of wider, more open, fast corners, it's incredible. And the flatter it gets, the more it starts to call attention to how much traction you're actually getting. So you kind of hit a wide sweeping flat corner on this bike and you feel like a hero. It's insane. Tighter corners are a bit more of a wrestling match. You do have to really be conscious of how you're leaning that bike and how you're weighting the wheels. Like I mentioned a little bit earlier, the long chainstay doesn't bother me. I'm 6'2", and I like a longer rear center because it makes my bike feel more proportionate. You know, the back end of the bike isn't tiny compared to the long front end that I have. If you're a shorter rider, that could start to feel a little bit weird having that long rear end. Maybe I would go with the Heckler. I'm an idiot. They're all Hecklers. Maybe I'd go with the mullet if I were a shorter rider. And one more thing about the geometry and the handling, this bike is super, super forgiving. It doesn't really care that your body position might be wrong or your technique for whatever you're doing might be wrong. It is a very forgiving bike. Part of that could be due to the extra weight. Your body weight can influence the bike a little bit less because it's heavier itself. But I think a lot of it is due to the geometry and the suspension. So who is this bike for? I see this bike being really good for 3 groups of people. So if you really like the Bronson or the Hightower, but you want a bike with a motor in it, this is your e-bike because it's almost identical to the new Bronson. It feels a lot like a Hightower in that suspension feel. So there you have it. I personally really like the Giant Trance XE. That was my favorite e-bike I rode all of last year. This gives it a run for its money. These 2 bikes now round out my top 2 favorite e-bikes I've ever ridden. I think the Heckler wins on kind of the geometry, handling, and suspension side of things. The Trance had incredible suspension, but the Heckler's a little poppier and a little more responsive, and for me, on a full-size e-bike, that takes priority. But I do think that Trance wins on the motor. That Yamaha motor is one of the best I've ever ridden. The last group of people I think who would really like this bike are riders who value a smooth, confident, capable, controlled ride, but they don't want to sacrifice on the Sky Miles. They still want to get airborne. They still want a bike that's responsive, that's lively, that's poppy, that's fun to ride. This is that e-bike for me. Just to wrap this up with a one-line bike review on the Santa Cruz Heckler, it is by far the best e-bike for getting the wheels off the ground without being a slouch on the ground. Oh, and one more thing, we have a Santa Cruz Heckler MX that I have access to. If you want to see a MX versus 29 video, drop a comment below, and thanks for sticking around. See you next time.